I got my stuff.
Hello, welcome NextOppSocial family. Welcome to another discussion here at NextOppSocial. Today we are talking about a topic that comes up a lot from people that we talk to and that we just hear out there, which is around content creation and the stress around constantly creating content, especially in our digital world. So before we get into it, as always, I'm Richelle Wright-Wilson. I'm joined by Juwan Buford. If you are watching, please make sure, if you haven't subscribed yet to our channel, that you hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on our weekly chats and interviews. And feel free to go hit that get episodes in my inbox link, which is in the description. And so you'll never miss out. So the reason why this content creation topic came up was actually around a discussion Joanne and I were having, specifically around how I, as a marketer, am sort of shifting what I'm going to be offering to my clients and what I'm going to be focusing on more heavily moving forward, which is this idea of long-term marketing strategy. Not just meaning planning out this complicated long-term strategy, but the efforts around marketing that work for you in the long term, right? So maybe something that you're doing right now doesn't work immediately, but to that extent can also work in the immediate, but also is going to work 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now, right? So it's establishing these honestly tried and true methods and habits that we have sort of, I don't want to say forgotten about, but we've pushed aside in our society and culture of social media dominance, right? So with social media being the main focus of how most people tackle their marketing, just to be blunt and specific, if you run a business in 2020, even before 2020, a lot of people, there's still people who aren't using social media, I suppose, and maybe that might be difficult, but most people are using social media as their main marketing method, right? And so meaning things like Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And there's this constant pressure, a question I get all the time. I get two questions all the time are, how do I get more followers? How do I get more people to show up on my live? How do I get more likes? How do I get more impressions? How do I get a bigger reach? Right. And then the second question I get all the time is, I've run out of ideas. What do I talk about now? Right. So that's what we're going to kind of touch on today is, how do you eliminate the stress around constantly creating content, and how do you eliminate the overwhelm with marketing in your business when we're very much in a time where content is still king, right?
Yeah, I mean, when we first started broaching this topic, I'm looking at my notes, and now just you kind of starting a summary. It reminds me of the typical conversation I have with business owners nowadays, right? Whereas, you still have a huge swath of business owners that just don't get social media, haven't employed social media. But because of what's transpired, particularly given the pandemic, you have more and more business owners who realize that I have to be here, right? I have to jump on these platforms. I have to utilize them. And the urgency is real. Yes, you have to. Let's make this clear. You must have some type of social media presence in today's society, okay? I used to try to be coquettish about this, but for me, I'm looking at individuals, particularly in the restaurant industry, because I believe that's one of the industries that was hardest hit. Like, these are the businesses that really took a pounding during this pandemic. And for me, it was almost fascinating. Like, I'm almost doing case studies with my clients, right? I have a number of clients who were in business for 15, 20, 30 years, love them to death, lifelong friends, pray for them every single day, but they didn't have a social media presence. And I don't need to tell you what happened to them, right? The doors are shut. They may not open up again. And I just read a report, I think it may have been Forbes, or I was listening to Economist, one or the other, where they're literally talking about you're going to have like another huge dip during the fall winter, because once the temperatures start dropping below 50 degrees, people stop eating out, or they eat out a lot less. And then on top of that, you already have what transpired during the pandemic. So you're going to have all these restaurants closing down. And they're saying 50% of those restaurants will never open again, right? And for me, it's been interesting, right, to go online and look at these restaurants and just do a quick peek at their social media presence and find out that the one thing they have in common is they don't have it, right? On the other hand, there are several other restaurant owners that I work with. They're crushing it. I mean, they're winning. It's like the pandemic didn't even happen, right? I think a lot of it has to do with mindset. I think a lot of it is due to leadership, but it's also due to the fact that, and right mindset and leadership, social media presence, all kind of correlate, right? But they have a robust presence on social media, and they're doing better now than they did beforehand. They're hiring employees. They can't keep up with orders that are coming in. They're taking advantage of other vehicles that are out there like DoorDash and some of the other ones, and to a greater or lesser extent, they're kind of hemming and hawing about that. But the bottom line is they're still relevant. Their doors are still open, and they're still serving people, right? And so I don't think we can underestimate how important it is to have a social media presence. But on the flip side of it, you're a business owner. And at the end of the day, regardless of what it is you're marketing, you're always going to have that tension between what do I need to do to maintain operations? What do I need to do to maintain my tax and accounting? What do I need to do to maintain client service levels? What do I need to do? You're wearing all these different hats, and it's easy to look at social media and, quite frankly, just build an online presence. It's just another task that has to be done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you find the time to create the content? Where do you find the time to post the content? Where do you find the time to distribute the content? Because, I'll defer to you there, Shirley, but when I think about having an online presence, that's kind of like the nuts and bolts, right? Ideating about the concept that you want to share, deciding which platforms to post the content and going through that process, then deciding, okay, I post the content, how I'm going to promote this content and get it out there, and then get it distributed, because if it isn't distributed, you can't monetize it, right? So you have to have a plan to do all those different things. And as a business owner, not even talking, we haven't gotten to the part of, okay, so how do you keep ideas fresh? Where do you come up with new content to stay relevant? Where do you even find the time? What mechanisms do you even use to post content? And I think ultimately that's kind of like the stress that we were talking about, right? Mm-hmm. How do you fit that into your daily modus operandus?
Well, one thing I want to address based on what you talked about is, and I'm glad you emphasized it, is that you do have to have a social media presence. How robust or vast that is up to you, but it's a little naive, and it's just short-sighted to feel like you're too good for Facebook, you're too good for Instagram, and whatnot. The reason for having, at the very core, if nothing else, for having a social media presence is so that people can socialize with you. That's it, right? You have to create a mechanism within society, the society that you live in. The society you live in is used to being able to get things immediately. We're in an Amazon world now, right? But also, it's just the reality of how people communicate now. We text, we message, we use chats, right? We're not just picking up the phone to call. So, and there's nothing, that doesn't mean it's not it's losing personality out of that, or we're only going to do things this old school way. If you don't have these socialization features, your business can significantly suffer, mostly because there are only a few areas on the internet that you have control of with your messaging and with what people perceive about you. But if you decide to abandon some of these areas where you can control that messaging, can control the dialogue, well, then you're just leaving it up to the general public to make assumptions about you and to create their own dialogue about you. And now it's out of your control. So at the very least, you need to have something where people can socialize with you. When you talk about the businesses who truly are like killing it and doing really well on social media, even restaurants and whatnot. If you go look at their profiles, their pages, what they're doing, right? These are businesses who understand their brand really well,
Yep.
right? And part of understanding your brand really well is knowing that you do this one thing. This is what I do. If I'm a restaurant, I make food, right? We make food for people to eat and consume. And it's also remembering that you as the business who's posting on social media, you do this one thing, but your customers, clients, followers, people digesting your information are also digesting hundreds of thousands of other messages a day. So all you need to talk about is what you do. That's it. Your one thing. So if you go look at these other businesses and brands, they are extremely repetitive. They're extremely repetitive about what they're talking about, what they say, how they present it. And while you as the content creator might feel this is extremely monotonous, this is really repetitive, when you're sitting there wondering, oh, what should I talk about today? You've already lost track because you talk about your one thing over and over and over and over again. Sure, you approach it in different ways, but you just talk about that one thing. And the reason for that is because you need to remember that we are digesting 8,000 other messages, and we need some sort of constant reminder about who you are and what you do to make it more memorable for when we need your services, when we're ready to work with you, when we're ready to visit your restaurant. We immediately think of you because you were extremely clear and repetitive about what you do. So when business owners ask me all the time, like, I'm running out of ideas of what to post. Well, then you must not know what you do, because you just only need to talk about that one thing. And it doesn't really even, and then the other thing is I tell people, all right, well, let's look at some of your content that's done really well in the past. Great, create that again. Oh, I already did that. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because especially on social media, the content lasts for hours, a day, 2 days. Do you think anyone remembers that? No, we don't remember it. Do it again, right? So at the very least, if you're stressed about what to talk about what you've already talked about. That's what you talk about. The same thing over and over and over again. The other thing is that, going back to what I was talking about with long-term strategy things is the goal of social media is to socialize, is to build this community, is to build conversation around what you're doing, right? So again, being extremely repetitive about what you do is essential to doing that. But it's also really easy to get burnt out with this content creation hamster wheel that you're on, because it doesn't end, right? You don't all of a sudden have enough Instagram posts where you don't need to do it anymore. You don't all of a sudden you haven't maxed out on Facebook, right? I think on LinkedIn you can max out on connections or something at some point, but you're not maxing out on messages or conversations that are happening, right? It doesn't end. They created infinite scroll and all these things for a reason, but it's not as sustainable of a practice that if that's all you're doing forever, right? Because what happens is that takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy, and these platforms are either going to disappear someday or evolve into something else. And now, do you have the mental or physical capacity to learn something new or shift everything that you're doing to somewhere else? Probably not, because you've just been on this hamster wheel of content creation all the time. So that's why things like blogging, doing SEO for your website, having an email marketing process, and using platforms like Pinterest and YouTube, which are search engine social media, where content lives for years and years and years, is really essential to what you're doing in business in general.
I like it. I like it. I mean, you made some real powerful points. That whole monotony piece, that's so powerful, because that is the ultimate conundrum, I think, for entrepreneurs who are attempting to utilize social media, and like you said, struggling with what to create. It's like, know what your brand is, know the nature of your work, know what your value prop is, right? Something I'm fond of sharing with entrepreneurs is share what you do, right? Share what you do. That's how you create content. But in my mind, at least my personal experience, it's also how you create credibility, right? Where people come to your website and it's not always some curated whatever event that you created, but you're literally giving people an inside look in what you do on a day-to-day basis. And that's something that, if you're an entrepreneur working, that's something you can share every single day. Mm-hmm. Or if you want to do it on every 2 days or a weekly, whatever the case may be, let people get the inside look into the nature of work that you do, the nature of the conversations that you're having, whatever your process is, right? If you're a musician, or if you're a creative, or if you're a graphic designer, or if you are, any of these different things, give people a little bit of a look behind the curtain. And that's something you can do on a daily basis, because if you're an entrepreneur, you should be working on a daily basis, right? You should be building an empire, building the tallest building in your city or town. So I love it. And this ideal of blogging and utilizing YouTube and utilizing Pinterest. I think I shared this with you. I suffered an incident that left me with a slight concussion, left me with bruises, injuries, where, quite frankly, I was on the shelf for a little bit, right? I went completely absent on social media. And quite frankly, I was a little bit stressed out about it at first. But I just didn't have the bandwidth to deal with it and try to maintain other things I had going on in my life, and make sure that, children are taken care of, and other work and all that fun stuff. And for me, it was so fascinating. It really opened my eyes to how valuable my blog was. I didn't pay my blog much attention. I mean, I post on every now and again. I didn't realize how valuable the YouTube videos were. I really didn't. Because once again, you're tempted to emphasize the short term, the Facebook, the LinkedIn, Instagram, these other, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever. And you're very tempted to kind of disregard some of the other platforms, as you just mentioned, because you figure you're not going to get immediate return. Mm-hmm. And when I think about the last 4 or 5, maybe even last 6 clients I've taken on, it was a result of email campaigns. It was a result of my blog. It was actually a result of a YouTube video. That's what people reference when I ask them, how did you learn about me? What did you like best, right? And so to go from academic to real life, right, to demonstrate to those who are listening in, that's the type of content, as you so eloquently, articulated, that will really serve you in the long term, that will really build your business, build your credibility, really create that sustainable business model where you're not burning out. The other thing I think about too, and it's very important, is that's real estate that you own online. Mm-hmm. You own your blog, you own your YouTube channel. Even though I'm still kind of sideways about it, it's still YouTube, so you don't own that platform. But YouTube is, anyway, I'll defer to you on that. I don't know opinions about what's going on YouTube. I've seen some stuff they've done to other entrepreneurs, but at least in terms of your blog and in terms of your website, that's real estate that you own, mm-hmm. right? So if Facebook changes the algorithm again, if Instagram decides they don't like your messaging, I've seen some people get caught up on LinkedIn and not be there 2-3 weeks later, right?
Yeah, LinkedIn now has a story feature, and people got all frustrated. Oh, now I got to do this. And it's like, well, these platforms are going to continue to change.
Right. And they're also going to, every now and again, decide that they don't like certain people. Mm-hmm. They don't like certain content. They don't like certain industries, mm-hmm. Stuff's going to shift on those platforms. And so having the ability to have some real estate you own is so absolutely imperative. And I know you can speak to that far better than I can.
Well, and it's also understanding that some of these long-term tactics, they do work for you in the short term, like you just mentioned, right? So platforms like Pinterest, not only can your pins and the things that you put there live for years and years and years, but with a good flow and process that you have set up, and when it's set up correctly, it can also work for you immediately, right? Same thing with YouTube. Yeah, you do need to gain some traction and whatnot, but depending on what you're talking about, you could blow up tomorrow, right? And then to that same extent, your email is your email list, right? Your email marketing process. If you don't have one, you need one right now, because email is still the top digital converter of money, of sales, over social media, always, over any social media platform. Email marketing, good messaging, consistent email marketing will still, especially if you're in a position where you need some sales now, you need to email people. You need to put an offer out there that goes to someone's inbox directly. There's no algorithm for an inbox, right? Well, I guess Google can put it in different tabs, but it's getting there, right? It's going right to that person. They're going to see it. They might not read it, but it's right there, right? You're not just hoping they scroll past it. So these tactics not only work for you in the long run, they can also work for you in the short term as well too. But when you look at, individuals who are doing this on a high level, high scale, and maybe, yes, they have a team and they have a whole content creation, blah, 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 but they're just reusing their long form, long-term content and chopping it up for social media into a bunch of little bits. That's all they're doing. That's all they're doing. They're taking one paragraph at their blog and that's the post for today. They're taking a 5-second clip from an hour-long YouTube video and that's the post for today. That's really it. So if you focus on the long-term efforts, putting your energy there first, not only you're not going to ask yourself, what should I talk about or share? I've run out of ideas, because you're going to have it all done. You're going to have, your ideas are done. You've already created it. And you're not going to worry about these arbitrary numbers of followers and counts and impressions, because it doesn't matter in the long term anyway, but you're going to create this flow of continued interest for the long term, that you're not going to care if you have more followers and fans. You're not going to care if your reach got bigger. You're not going to care if because that's going to just naturally go up. So it's just super, super important to remember that, even this year is a good example, okay? Remembering always that technology and our digital era grows exponentially, okay? So what might have taken a long time for Facebook to take off or Instagram to take off is not going to take other platforms as long anymore to take off. Case in point, TikTok. TikTok has exponentially grown and become this behemoth of a platform, to the point where we're making social policies about it in just a year. It really started in November-ish of last year, and especially through the pandemic and whatnot has become huge, and especially politically and whatever. But that's how fast this platform grew. It didn't take years, right? But if you're only on this social media hamster wheel, there's going to be a new TikTok next year. There's going to be a new whatever coming up all the time. There's always going to be something new that is going to capture people's attention very, very, very quickly. And you're going to feel very compelled to be like, oh, I got to do this now. I got to do that now. And it's not going to feel as urgent or immediate if you have long-term strategy processes put into place. It's a reason why Gary Vee can create the same content and put it on all the platforms, and it's the same video over and over and over again,
A couple things come to mind as I listen to you. The first being, once again, right, the importance of long-form content and how to utilize it, right? Because I know you and I may take it for granted, but people don't think to do that. People don't think to repurpose the content they have out there already, because there's this idea you got to create something brand new. And it's staring you right in the face, right? If you look at any company's information, if you look at any quote-unquote influencer or social media magnate or entrepreneur that's heavily utilizing social media, you will see redundancy in their content. you'll see the same video repurposed over and over again. You'll
but
find
you
it on
want
several
to
different
as well. You're going to
Exactly.
want to see that, you know?
Yep. The other thing that I think about that you just shared as well is this ideal of, how can I put this? Email marketing.
Mhm.
And I'll even go a step further. A lot of people sleep on this, but utilizing digital newsletters, right?
Mhm.
I have been pleasantly surprised with some of the conversations I've had with business owners who are utilizing digital newsletters, and they're crushing it. They're having tremendous success with it. I mean, they're building a community around these newsletters. They're building a following. These newsletters are very effective marketing pieces, and a lot of folks would assume that it is old school to do that. But no, I mean, these tools are very effective. And the other thing that I look at, because of course I'm on several other people's email lists, I just kind of, part of it I do it is just to see what other people are doing. I want to see what type of content they're sending out, right? But I think what hangs people up as well is they're trying to be perfect with their content.
Right.
They're trying to create the perfect email. They're trying to create the perfect newsletter. They're trying to create the perfect article. When the reality of the matter is, no, you don't need to be perfect. You don't have to come up with this new magic verbiage like a genie pop up out of the, your table and mesmerize everybody. It's just creating simple, easy messages with directives and making sure you have somewhere that you're directing them, of course, so they can finally engage you when you're sending this information out. And I wanted that to be something that you kind of elaborated on, because I know a lot of people, they do the exact same thing. They try to make it overcomplicated, whether it be email campaigns, newsletters, just messaging, period.
Mm-hmm. So I'll give an example. Our newsletter, our email that goes out once a week from NextOppSocial, if you subscribe to it, is our RSS feed, which is, it's really just a code that connects to our blog. Our blog are our episodes, and it just emails you every Thursday afternoon the latest episode that just aired on Wednesday. So as long as I update the blog, the email automatically goes out. I don't do anything. That's it. It just does it, right? So that's extremely easy way. It pulls all the information and content I already put on the website and pushes it out into the email, and it's good to go. The other thing is you need to, just like with social media, we get fatigued around too many messages and then we do nothing. That's extremely important in email as well. You cannot, to a certain extent, if you have a true digital newsletter, a newsletter is going to have more call to actions and more things to click on and more possibly it can, right? A roundup of stuff. But if it's branded right and it's tailored right, it works really well. And typically those bigger roundup things come bi-monthly or maybe not weekly, right? But for you as just a business owner, having a clear, simple email with one action you want them to take can result in more action than if you put that same messaging out on social media. So one action might be to reply to the email. Another action might be to click this button that takes them somewhere to take another action. It doesn't need to be overly complicated. I think about my own email list, which has on a low end a 50% open rate, and industry standard is about 20. So why do my emails get open 30%, at least on the low end, 30% more? Because I only talk about one thing every email. That's it. Sometimes I email my list twice a week because I have two different things to say, but I'm not going to put them both in the same email, right? It literally is a picture of my face that says from the desk of Richelli Wright. I have text, maybe an image, there's a button or a call to action, and that's it. And also, I'm not writing out this giant email. Sometimes that can work, right? If you're, especially depending on who your audience is, if they really are going to do better of like, because I even subscribe to newsletters that are lengthy. But you really got to know your audience well. And my audience needs to skim and take action, skim and take action. So with that, it takes me less time to write this email than to craft a whole social media post. So, it's just, again, this is really comes down to understanding your brand, understanding your business, and really understanding your audience and what they want. But my goodness, done is better than perfect. You can always change this down the line. You can, if the emails aren't working, you switch it up, right? I've done that several times. I've switched out the format of how my emails work all the time, and you should do that, right? If you need to. You're not, it doesn't, don't get so hung up around, well, it's got to be this perfect flow and whatever. You got to start somewhere, right? Because truthfully, especially if you're not doing these things right now, you're not going to have all the answers around what's going to be the best way to do it. The only way for you to know that is to get data around what you're doing. So you got to do something. You got to start somewhere.
I love it. Wow. Like, you brought up so many valid points here. The whole blog and RSS feed, that combination, right? I know that's just so invaluable.
I set it up once and it's done. That's it. I don't even look at it.
Yeah. And I think that's what people need to hear, that a lot of these processes and these strategies aren't nearly as time consuming and complicated as we can make them out to be.
Correct.
Right?
They might require some time for setup and putting the right process in place, but they require a lot less maintenance than the hamster wheel of social media.
Yeah. And then of course, time for the not shameless plug, right? Part of this is individuals need to understand the value of having conversations with professionals like yourself, for Shelly. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I'm transparent. I think it's so entertaining that I have people will oftentimes contact me as if I know answers to social media questions and that I'm some type of marketer, when that's really not my forte. But I am like more than willing to share with individuals, look, 90% of what I do online, number one, I hear 100 out of 100% of stuff that I come in contact with, I only employ probably 5-10% of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I should employ more, but I'm only employing 5-10% of what I hear and digest on a weekly, monthly, and yearly basis. But of that 10%, almost 100% of that 10% came from you. Just listening to you, just looking at your newsletters every now and again, jumping online and saying, what is she talking about today, right? And just jotting down a couple notes. And I tell people, eat the fruit and spit out the seed, right? The things you can do, just do it. The things you can't do, log it somewhere and come back and revisit it. But the most important part is to take action, and also for people to avail themselves of professionals like yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I try to explain to people, look, marketing is skilled trade. Just like dribbling a basketball is skilled trade. Being a dentist or a doctor is skilled trade. Being very effective at real estate is skilled trade. All these things are skilled trade. And unless you went to school, and unless you do this on a day-to-day basis, unless you're a practitioner, and even practitioners, look, sharp iron sharpens iron, right?
Exactly.
They're interacting with other practitioners to get good at the skill. So, please don't be obtuse. I am more than willing to admit that I know this much about social media and digital marketing. And I'm more than willing to go to individuals who are more effective than I am and ask questions, or at the very least tune in to some of the things they're doing so I can pick up those nuggets, pick up those ideals, all that stuff. So it's worth it. For me, I think about it from the standpoint of ROI, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I pay a digital marketing professional, let's say $200 an hour, right? And let's say I spend 2 hours with them on a monthly basis. That's a $400 expense. This is how I think about it, right? I think to myself, well, if that 2 hours a month gains me 5 clients, and let's say my average compensation is $300 to $400, that's what I call a phenomenal ROI.
Yeah.
It's worth it to me, right? If that 2 hours gives me an extra 10 clients per month, look, if you could put $400 in the ATM machine, and every time you did it, an extra 1,000, 1,600, 2,000 kicked out, I think some of us will probably make that our part-time jobs. I think we have to arm wrestle and fight and wrestle folks to get them from that ATM machine. And that's how I kind of think about the value of having access to individuals with your skilled trade, to everyone, and why they should contact professionals like yourself, right? That is the type of difference you can make in an entrepreneur's life. So what I'm saying is this: don't think reading one book and watching one YouTube video is somehow going to make you a guru.
Mm-hmm.
Invest in working with practitioners, get in their face, barter, do whatever you have to do this, because the way I feel about having an online presence, social media, is the same way I felt about having a website 20 years ago, right? I remember when websites were novel. There were only things that large corporations invested money in. And at some point in the marketplace, we reached the point where it was like, look, if you don't have a website, it's almost like having the best product or service downtown Detroit, Birmingham, wherever you live at, right? Troy, doesn't matter. You can have the best business or product in the world. You have an incredible value prop. If people can't find you because they can't see the awning to your store, you're not going to be in business very long, right? And that's what transpired 20 years ago when it comes to having a website and having a presence online. And now I feel that way about long form content and having social media presence. I mean, people just aren't going to be able to find you. And I don't know how to make it more simplistic, how important it is.
Yeah. It's necessary. And for people who are using social media, you get it, you understand it, you found your flow with it, whatever. But if you're not implementing things like consistent email marketing, if you're not updating your website, if you're not improving the search engine capabilities of your website, if you're not imploring other strategies that can work for you when you don't have the capacity to maintain social media, because that can happen, as Joanne has mentioned, that's a reality that you should plan for, right? Or if that social media platform disappears, if you get locked out of an account, if you get flagged for no reason and now you can't use it, if you're not tapping into these other areas, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. If we think about some of the big marketers or just even social or just digital presences, these are people who built up a pretty good following before having a digital presence was a thing, right? So if I think about like the Seth Godins and stuff like that, they have built up. Are they doing all this posting and all this different? No, like Seth is sending out an email every day, right? Which again, it's his RSS feed. Sometimes it's 3 lines. That's it, So it's like, but that consistency of presence of showing up in a way that works well for him in the long run, right? There's a flow for that for you too. And if you don't know what that is right now, then yeah, you need to reach out and ask. That's why I do the things that I do, right? On top of that, yeah, I can't emphasize enough how much we need to be utilizing the other people who are doing their things day in and day out. It's unrealistic, even though our society makes it seem so, especially for business owners. It's unrealistic for you to think that you're just going to be the expert of all the things of running a business. I don't know why we think that. It's the same mentality of that job seekers should be really good resume writers. Why? I don't know why we put all that pressure on ourselves to think that we're just supposed to be good at all of these things, right? Or that you're because you have access to learn, because everyone has the access usually to learn these things, that therefore you should be good, right? You should just take the time and be the expert of all of it. But then I don't really understand the point of you being in your own business anyway. You might as well just, now you're a marketer, right? To that same extent, I see a lot of people who pick up things like, oh, I can manage social media or I can be a marketer because they built their business and brand really well, right? But that's not necessarily true that it's going to translate elsewhere either. But I don't know. Now we're getting off topic. But regardless, it's so important to consider yourself a year from now. Consider your business 2 years from now. Consider yourself 5 years from now. Do you want to be doing the same things, marketing yourself at the same intensity? Do you want to have to do it at that same intensity 5 years from now? You probably don't. If you're just like, oh, I got to still maintain all this 5 years from now, that seems exhausting. So that's why you got to implement these other long-term processes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about how can we bring practicality into the equation as well. Here's the bottom line: you're gonna burn out.
Yeah,
you're gonna burn out if you are posting 2-3 hours a day, let's say.
Or if it's taking you 2 to 3 hours to get a post up. Yeah.
Right. And I'm a perfect example of that, right? I have all these wonderful ideals, and I actually have gotten to the point where at least I know how to create some of the content that I want. But in terms of actually posting that content and then distributing it, oh gosh, it literally will take me 2 to 3 hours a day to do that. And I've had periods in my business where I've done that, and I'm not going to front. Great results. I was getting contacts, I was getting interaction, setting appointments. I was not concerned about the vanity stats at all. I was concerned about the engagement, the exchanges I was having, the relationships I was building, the network I built. To be transparent with you, that was my approach to LinkedIn, right? That's how I went from 0 connections to over 25,000. I'm glad to say that the majority of 25, 26, 27, wherever it's at this point, I don't even keep up with that anymore. I just concern myself with how many people are engaging and exchanging with me, having conversations with me. That's what's most important to me. But that build up to that was extremely exhausting. It was extremely time consuming. It wore me out. And I'm a person that has a lot of energy. I mean, I don't front. I get up and go. 5 a.m., 12 o'clock at night, I'm on, right? And it still wore me into the ground. And I just cannot imagine doing that for the next 3 to 4 to 5 years. No way, no how, right? Not going to happen. And so just from the standpoint of practicality, for those of you who are listening, right? I think about it like this. And I believe this ardently. People don't pay 5-star prices for mediocre service or for mediocre products or value. They just don't, right? Not if they're aware of it, they don't do that, right? No one's going to walk into White Castle and pay $30 for a White Castle burger. It's not going to happen, right? So with that being said, I know being a social media guru or practitioner or designer or architect or project manager, whatever you want to call it, that's not my expertise. That's not my space of power. That's not my space of competency. What my space of competency and power is what if you go online, you'll see what that is, right? Not going to turn this to a commercial. I am going to continue, and I encourage everyone to do the exact same thing, to understand that, right? Understand the strategy, be able to implement the strategy, but go to individuals, like you said before, who are doing this and who are actually practitioners. Mm-hmm. When you look at, you mentioned Seth, we use Gary Vee. There's a lot of them out there, right? It's endless supply of people to look to. But the one thing I also remind individuals as well is, look, those individuals did not blow up overnight.
Right.
They didn't blow up in 3 months. They didn't blow up in 1 year. They didn't blow up in 5 years. It took time. And now they have this long form content that's out there. Now they're dicing it up and they're spraying it out. And so you're seeing all these snippets and bits across social media. And because they have that built in, as I think Tim Ferriss was the one. Yes, Tim Ferriss one I got from. He says 1,000. I think it's really 3,000. But they have that tribe now of 3,000 plus people. Not 3,000 people are subscribed to them, but 3,000 plus people who are like tuned into everything that they do. And that's the goal. That's what you're taking aim at. And whether that happens over the course of 3 months or if it takes you 10 years, it's worth it when you get there, right? That's what you're really taking aim at. And that's what I think about as I'm listening to you is, you know, it's a reaffirmation of that. I know too many business owners, I know too many entrepreneurs or personalities that have gone viral. And have gone viral, and okay, you were hot for a second, and then it was done.
Right.
Right. So you have people out here who are taking aim at going viral. What good is going viral if you don't have the long form content, the infrastructure, and the strategy support it? Right. It's like your talent will sometimes take you places where your processes and your thinking and your planning can't keep you. Right. So go viral, but you better have some type of system working in the background to monetize that attention that you're getting at the time. Or else you can go viral one time, you're going to be disappointed about what happens thereafter, right? You're just going to be hot for a second. It's going to be a wrap. And people are going to move on to the next viral experience, right? I think about it like the WAP moment, right? WAP was all over the place for a minute. It went viral.
Yeah.
It's silent now. People aren't talking about that anymore. They're on to the next chaotic or
now they're on I just sent an email about this of now they're on to the guy named Nathan who's riding a skateboard on the highway drinking ocean spray, you know. So it's like
right.
You know, and he'll have his he's having his moment. It's a great moment and whatever, but there's going to be another Nathan here in a week. So yeah. It's not enough to bank on viral content. Also, that's a whole nother discussion around how viral content has evolved into what makes content viral. But regardless, I think to wrap it up, what you need to do is look at what you're currently doing. What are you currently doing? Are you implementing social media? If not, you need to, right? If you're already implementing social media, are you going to hit burnout on this process? And if you are, you need to shift that and adjust that. And if you're ready to take that step with finding a more sustainable process that even if you weren't able to hire someone full-time to do, that you could maintain and is going to build for you in the long run, you need to start that now, right? Updating your website, having some sort of blog, podcast, some sort of long-form content that can live on, and then finding a way to consistently share it over and over and over again and getting repetitive. So we are going to wrap up here. If you enjoyed this, please comment below. Please share it. Please let us know your thoughts around it. Again, make sure you subscribe to our channel. More great discussions are coming, and we'll see you all soon.